Welcome back to your Pig Shell Show. Wilma Claire alongside Kevin McPherson, our favorite for our Hog Hoops report. Kevin, we got a bunch of stuff that we got to talk about this week. Muss back in front of the media. We had a press conference. What were your favorite moments? What do you think the fans need to know about that one if they missed it online?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's always some favorite moments when Muss comes to the mic. And we were getting a little bit into the schedule with the Purdue exhibition game. He was talking about that. And Duke came back up because that's a big deal, right? You get Duke, you're going to host Duke at Bud Walton. And then we kind of peeled into the conference slate a little bit. And I actually asked him a couple of questions. First of all, getting Kentucky home and away for back-to-back years. Arkansas has been in the SEC for over 30 years. It's only the third time that Arkansas and Kentucky have played home and away. I think that's crazy.
That is crazy.
I think it's crazy, but back-to-back years. And I just kind of asked him, I said, where the brand is now, do you think that Arkansas was able to lean into the folks at the SEC scheduling office for more marquee matchups, or did they just hand you, they just give you the schedule and you get what you get? And he kind of joked a little bit, but then we got into, I then brought up the fact, well, if you finally get Tennessee at home, and it seems like this will be his first year in 5, it'll be his 5th season, that he didn't have to go to Knoxville. And then I said, you might need to get a timeshare though in Tuscaloosa because you're going back there. And so one of my favorite moments is you can really tell when there's something that he's on fire about, and he does a pretty good job sometimes of putting a little bit of a governor on it and keeping it capped. But his interest level talking about the scheduling and how it impacts even the opportunity to win a league title and the lack of balance in scheduling. He talked about where he was at Nevada, how it was always balanced, but at Arkansas, you're looking at how you can use the SEC in your full season to get ready for the NCAA tournament, which is already true, but there's, I think, a lesser focus on winning the conference. Hard to do when you're playing the top teams mostly on the road. I mean, Arkansas, like I mentioned, Tennessee, this will be the first time Arkansas hasn't traveled to Tennessee in 5 years, and they've not hosted every year. And then Alabama, it's one of those things where it's 2 times at home and 5 or 6 times on the road in the last 7 or 8 matchups. So there is a lack of balance, but that was my favorite part of it, just because you could tell when Muss's ears perk up and he's got an opportunity maybe to, he does. It's poorly veiled, it's thinly veiled, but you can tell he's not happy about it. And then there's some things we probably don't probe enough on because we know where he might stand on it. But Muss, anytime he has a press conference, there's always good stuff coming out of it. He knows how to talk to the media. He's a guy that the marketing and information. He's gonna keep a lid on things he doesn't want to talk about, but he'll talk plenty about a lot of things. And because of his vast experience, there's a lot of stuff that comes out. And I think what made this press conference even better, it wasn't Zoom. Everybody was there in person inside Bud Walton Arena in the media room. And we got to interview 3 of the players. Muss went on first. 3 of the transfers. There was 9 years of Division I experience at the podium between Jared Davenport, L. Ellis, and Trayman Mark. And so this was, you're capping your June and July limited practice sessions. That's what that was all about, kind of recapping all of that. Arkansas still had a couple of practices to go later that day, and then again on Wednesday. Now they're on a little bit of a break. When they come back to school, now you're ramping things up. You're getting away from that limited stuff, and you're really starting to build toward the season, and things go quickly. This stuff moves. Football season's just getting underway, Will, but basketball.
I was going to say that it is. We're talking a lot about football here in the Pig Trail room, and I do love college football, but for the basketball people out there, when you see fall camp roll around, it's a couple months and then boom, it's basketball season. But
that's it.
Kevin, we got to talk about some visitors as well. No official visits, but we did have some visitors in the Razorback camp. Who was hanging around with Muss and the boys?
Yeah. So the day that we'd had the press conference, later that day when they practiced, they had 4 guys in, headlined by class of 2026, Jashawn J.J. Andrews. You brought up football. His dad was an All-American offensive lineman at Arkansas, first-team All-American and an All-Pro in the NFL. But so we're talking about Sean Andrews, former Razorback great from the Camden area. But J.J. plays basketball, 6'5", wing at Little Rock Christian Academy, explosive player, just so physically strong already. I mean, at 14, he looked like he was 19. We always say that about Keanu Boateng, but this is also true of J.J. Andrews. And he was up there for, they call it an unofficial visit, but he was able to go and attend practice, do the photo shoots with Muss. But JJ's, ESPN's had him ranked in its first top 25 for the class of 2026, as high as number 8 nationally, a 5-star. He's a guy that I think, when you start projecting ahead, he's already got some high major and Division I offers. But I've been around the young man, and not only is he a great player, he's a great person, but he's so mature for his age. He's very mature, not just physically, but his mindset. And I think, his mother was a Division I athlete. Obviously, his father was. He just comes not only from the bloodlines, but from being in the room with pros and people that have been at the highest levels in sports, helps you maybe have a more mature outlook on sports, and maybe understand more things about it other than just going out and executing. And so that kind of translates with him. And so I'm spending a lot of time on that. I think Arkansas staff, they already like the kid. I think after this experience, they fell in love. I mean, I think they were blown away by a lot of things that JJ Andrews already checks boxes at his age. But you had Jordan Harris, a 6'7" wing, also out of Central Arkansas at Maumelle High School, played a lot as a freshman last year. He's emerging. He's part of that ISO Joe Johnson's AAU grassroots program here in Central Arkansas. He's a young man that, along with his teammate at Maumelle, when we start talking about Jacob Lanier, a 6'6" combo guard, really can be featured more at the 1, but he can shoot the ball. He's already got a hog offer along with JJ Andrews we just talked about. But this 2026 class is loaded. And so those were two of the visitors on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, which was the final day of limited practices, Arkansas had another visitor, class of 2025 guard, Jordan Lowry. He's 6'2". He's a point guard. He'll be playing at Winston-Salem Christian in North Carolina this year, moving from Texas. And so he's also got some other visits and stuff that he was doing with some high major schools. I don't even think we can say Power 5 anymore, can we?
I don't really think we can. I mean, the whole thing's a mess. When people say Power 5, it just gives me a headache now. I have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, so Jordan Lowry was on campus. He did the photo thing. He went to practice. Said he loved it. He said that the coaching staff is great. He really liked, so I get to talk to him some. But I think it's a great opportunity if you're going to wrap up your summer stuff, even if it's limited. Get guys in there when you can. We know Keon Boateng, class of 2024. Just last week we were talking about his official visit just over a week ago. That was Arkansas's first official visit from that upcoming senior class. First official visitor in November's early signing period. Boateng's a 5-star here from the Little Rock area. He's going to take more visits. We'll talk a little bit about that. I think Missouri's going to get a visit. I think of his 8 finalists, maybe 2 or 3 more schools. Keep an eye on Indiana and Georgia Tech. I think maybe Arkansas and Missouri, if I had to say right now, are getting the first 2, or getting. I think Arkansas did very well on that visit with him, and I think he really enjoyed that. I think Missouri's a team to definitely keep an eye on, and maybe they get the next visit later this month. We'll see if he squeezes anything in between. But this is visit time kind of picked up, even though these were unofficial visits and really younger players. When we wind it back to about a 5-day span, Arkansas had 6 different players on campus. So that's a good thing. And I think if you're going to maximize getting these guys out to practice, because Boateng got to do that as well. Now, he'd been on campus previous, but it was his first official visit to Arkansas. But anytime you can get him out there to see your product, not just talk about what you can do, but they can come in and see it. All these players are constantly bragging about, and sometimes off the record, they don't want it to be on the record, but they tell me off the record, not only are the practices great, but really they're the best that they see when they go on other visits. I hear that more often.
That's great to hear.
And so I'm throwing that out there. I won't mention names or tie it to that.
Yeah, sure.
That's true. So I think it's smart anytime they can get guys in there to see that, because that's probably going to be their takeaway, and that gives you an advantage. So I think Arkansas ramping up, getting guys in there. We were talking about the press conference, Will. That's juggling a lot. You've got players coming in. You're dealing with the media. You've got practice. I mean, that's their job to do that. They got to work all that out. But I think Musselman does a great job of juggling that and promoting his program. But, during the press conference, getting to talk, he could have brought in veteran guys that Arkansas fans are already used to. I think it was a good idea because there's going to be plenty of opportunity for that. Why not reward some guys that just chose Arkansas, and they're at the end of their careers? These are veteran guys. They're not younger players. They're older guys, and let them make the most of this experience. Give them opportunities, and I'm getting them in front of the mic and from the cameras. We'll see what Arkansas does. He'll probably take guys like Devo or Trevor. I don't know who Muss is going to take with him for the SEC stuff, but I thought this was a great opportunity for those guys. And they talked about the veteran qualities about the team. 35 years of D1 experience, I wrote in a recent article just trying to count all that up. Had to get a calculator and go through it a couple of times and make sure that number was right, because it's a stark contrast to last year's much younger team with a ton of newcomers. This one's got a lot of newcomers, but a lot of returnees. And I just think it's a great mix. They talk about how most talked about, went on about Devo Davis and Trayman Mark kind of being that 1-2, Mark being the 6'6" transfer from Houston. I mean, both of those guys have crazy, wild, great resumes for NCAA tournament, but they're also lockdown defenders. And now you've got a tandem like that. Muss really, you could tell, like I said, there are high points in he's always got energy, but you can always tell when he ticks it up a notch, either with something that he's excited about, or maybe like the scheduling stuff where you could tell his hair's on fire a little bit about something he's not crazy about. But I really thought he went through a lot and covered a lot. And we don't even talk about a guy like Khalif Battle, and I brought his name up to the 3 transfers, and they were talking about his swagger and how he just has so many ways he can beat you. And they even said he's a dog on defense. We'll see. But he's a guy that I think could be one of those names we're throwing around early as we talk more about it, as a potential leading scorer for Arkansas, because he is an efficient volume 3-point shooter. If you run him off the 3 line, he's got craft, mid-range, getting to the rim. He likes to dunk. And he's 6'5", so he's not a little guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
you mentioned
there was just a lot of good stuff to talk about.
I'd be shocked if Devo was not on the roster for SEC Media Days. Definitely something to look forward to.
Right.
Kevin, I hate bad news. I don't want to call this bad news, but it's definitely heartfelt news. Charlie Valentine passing away at the age of 60. Razorback legend. Do you have any stories that you want to share on him?
Well, I mean, he was a great player, and he was, it was in the era of Eddie Sutton in the early 80s to mid 80s. And Charles is an Arkansas kid. He's from Newport. And some of the players, Sutton's was one of the best ever at developing guys. And that was back in the era where guys didn't just transfer out when things weren't going their way. They dug in and they made it work. And he was one of those guys, and he just got better every year. When again, I bring up the native Arkansan, that's always been big in Razorback sports, even in basketball. When you trace it back, Arkansas's best teams or biggest moments, there's always in-state flavor, guys that were almost always. And he was one of those guys. And so in his junior season, Arkansas is playing #1 North Carolina in Pine Bluff. February game. This is not an early season non-conference game. It was in the middle, getting toward the middle or the end of conference play. And Arkansas actually had a conference game on a Saturday. On Sunday, they're hosting North Carolina, the #1 team in the country, 20-0, undefeated. Michael Jordan, that team had 5 eventual first-round draft picks. One of those players was out. Kenny the Jet Smith. He had a broken hand, so he didn't play. He was at the game. But you had Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, Brad Daugherty, Joe Wolf. Had some other really good players, Matt Doherty, who later became the head coach of North Carolina many years later. But that was a stacked, loaded North Carolina team, aren't they always? And Arkansas was no slouch. Joe Klein, Alvin Robertson. So you had 6 future first-rounders playing the game. If you count Kenny Smith being in the building, he had 7 in the building. But you also had 4 Olympians. And a few months later in '84 in the summer, Joe Klein, Alvin Robertson, Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, it was the last Olympic team made up of amateurs for Team USA to win a gold medal in the Olympic under Bobby Knight. Yeah.
That's
so this was an interesting, but before we, that's getting ahead of ourselves, but Charles Valentine was an ultimate role player, but he was a guy that Arkansas really relied on to do blue collar work, great attitude, great teammate. Everybody always loved him. And he just continually grew in the program. Well, he hit arguably one of the biggest shots in program history. When I say arguably, it's a no-brainer. Arguably top 3. Scotty Thurman, U.S. Reed in the NCAA tournament. But for a regular season game, Thurman against Kentucky on Super Bowl Sunday when Arkansas was in the SEC a few years later in the '90s. But up to that point, Valentine hitting this shot with 4 seconds left puts Arkansas back up by 1. This is a team, this is NBC nationally televised game. This was a team that had beat everybody in front of it, 20-0. And Michael Jordan, we know what he ended up being. But there's a lot of sentimental value for me because I was at that game. I was 14 years old. It was the last game I got to attend with my dad. who would pass away in June. He had a year-long battle with lung cancer, but he was 39. And I've said, Dad, we got to get there an hour and a half early. And he said, that's probably a good idea. He's lugging around an oxygen tank. He goes, maybe we can get in and we're not fighting the crowd and I won't just be exhausted by the time we get our seat. So me, him, and my brother made it down there early. And I was one of those kids that was crazy about basketball. I was down on the baseline when players were doing pregame shots. And
I don't believe it.
I was on the baseline. Jordan misses one off the rim.
I believe it. I believe it, pal.
I threw the ball to Jordan. He said, thank you. I bugged Al McGuire by the or by the media table an hour before the game. And he was real nice to me. And he told me, I said, who's going to win? And he goes, I'm not sure North Carolina can leave here today still undefeated. And so I don't know if that was prediction. That's basically how he framed it. But that game has a lot of sentimental value for me because of my dad and the passing of Charles Valentine at such a young age. But that memory he made for me and my dad, it's priceless because I think about it all the time. I love sports. I grew up, born and raised in Arkansas, and my family is. And so that was one of those games. It's not just memorable no matter where you were, but I was in the building that day. I feel very fortunate. But Charles Valentine helped me have the greatest memory of my life. But one of the things that really stands out about him, Will, his senior season, the following year, Arkansas had a really young team. In some ways, it reminded me of last year's Arkansas team. They had a lot of freshmen, a lot of talent, but just so young. And Eddie Sutton, that wasn't his norm, is to be that young. And it would be his last year at Arkansas. There was a real awkward departure. He crawled. He made the statement, I would have crawled to Kentucky. And he'd been Arkansas's, at that point, greatest of all-time coach, a Final Four, an Elite Eight a few years before that with the triplets, getting to that Final Four. But Valentine as a senior, along with Joe Klein, those two guys were the leaders. Valentine, had a career-high scoring, averaging double figures, a big rebounder for Arkansas, but was always kind of a glue guy at that forward spot and just a great person. Everyone that's ever known him, Joe Klein, Darrell Walker, all these players who came from out of state to be Razorbacks and who now live here and thrive here in their lives, they just recently talked about what Charles meant, in addition to so many others. So kind of going on and on, I personalized it. And really, Charles Valentine is, to me, a hero for many reasons, but I had to make it personal because of the one big reason for me in a game that is extra memorable for me, even beyond what most Hog fans saw. And for those who didn't live through it, it was very rare, and it still is, to have that many future NBA players on one court at one time and the stakes be that high. I mean, one team's undefeated, ranked number one. Arkansas was, the season didn't end well. It was an upset early in the NCAA tournament against Virginia. But that was just one of those giant matchups, and it was nationally televised, which helps make it even bigger.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Very heartfelt story there with your dad. I love special memories like that, and we appreciate you sharing those. On the topic of sad stories, this is actually my last Hog Hoops report. I am leaving the Pig Trail Nation, and Kev, our reports, you and I, this on Sundays, was one of my favorite memories here at in the Pig Trail room. Feels like just yesterday I was packing up my car 3 years ago and moving to a state that I wanted to say never heard of. Obviously I knew where Arkansas was, but I had never thought about moving there once in my life. But in this business, in the TV world, you just got to sign up for the unexpected. And, driving across the country, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't go to a Power 5 school, so I had no rooting interest in really any college team with any significance. So I didn't know what I was in for. It was a truly special surprise ending up here in Arkansas. I will be continuing to root for the Razorbacks throughout my career and life. I'm very happy that I landed here. Very, truly special place. And thank you for everybody who welcomed this Northerner, because I understand there was one time I was at Sam's Club and this nice older guy, bigger dude, came up to me, and it was me and my now wife, and we were just going down the aisle. This random guy came up to me and he was like, for a Yankee, you're not too bad, and just walked away. And I'll tell you what, it was funny, but it was one of those moments of like, you know what? I really can appreciate that, because Not to say that cultures are different, but things, I mean, it's a completely different world from what I came from to here. And for everybody to accept me the way that they did, I truly appreciate it.
Well, it's been great. It's been a great run for us. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I'm glad I got to be a part of it with you. As you say farewell, I feel like I kind of badgered you into saying something today because I brought it up, but I'm going to miss you. And um, I think Arkansas is a unique experience for anybody that covers sports because we don't have pro teams, and you've got one high major program, one Power Five, Power Four, whatever we're calling it now. And the interest from corner to corner, all parts of the state. Anybody that's lived here and has moved on, that became a Razorback fan, falls in love with it. And so, from a journalistic standpoint, having grown up here, it's probably different than someone who comes in and sees this, especially where you're from, where there's a ton of schools to choose from, a lot of pro teams, interests vary, but here it's unique. And so I
Yeah.
hope you got, if you take nothing else with you, hope there was something. I think it's mostly positive, by the way.
Oh no, it's
I think it's
all
I think
positive.
it's almost 99% positive that we have that this kind of setup here. But I always wonder with people that come here for a little bit and then go, what their takeaway is, because if you think it's crazy, it's all we got. It's
No, seriously. And I grew up in Rhode Island, for anybody who didn't know. And in Rhode Island, there's University of Rhode Island, there's Providence College, which is a huge one, you know, Brown University, there's RISD, there's Bryant. It's just, you go down the list of college athletics and you got BU right around the corner. There's really not UConn on the other side. There's really not one program. We care about college athletics up there. We care about college basketball. We really don't care about anything else. But it's not like this. And I've seen other SEC towns through football travel and basketball travel. This little corner of college athletics, and you mentioned it, I think you hit it perfectly there. There really isn't a pro team to root for. And the fact that everybody's all in like they are on the Razorbacks, it's a truly special culture. I have had numerous friends come down here to visit, and within 36 hours, they're doing the hog call. Now, minus I bring them to sporting events, but they have all bought in. People that I know absolutely love the Razorbacks. It's a very special, very, very, very special fan base. I will miss it. I'm going to keep all the Twitter followers because I love all the drama. I love Hogs Twitter. It is a very special place to be. And I will think back on my time here in Arkansas very fondly. So thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate that. You didn't bully me into saying something. I was going to bring it up. Probably, but I will miss everybody very much. It was a very special experience. But with all that being said, that's all the time that we've got today for this Hogs Hoops Report. More Pig Trail after this.